What's up, Pats Nation? I'm Brian Hoyer here with episode 1 with my co-host and teammate, David Andrews.
What's up, guys? How y'all doing? Thanks for having me, Hoy.
Having you. You're part of the show.
I know. We're actually just going to talk about the ins and outs of quarterback center exchange. And that's
Love that. I mean, the amount of times
it's an art.
That we've had to take steps
Yeah, it's
together.
an art. It's an intimate relationship.
I said maybe one day we'll show people the intricacies of the silent snap from under where we got to do the
I don't know.
tap.
I don't know if they're ready for that yet. That might have to be like episode 27 or something.
Well, I'm glad we're here. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to sit down each week and just talk about, obviously not just the game the day before, but what to look forward, the ins and outs of the season and tell some stories along the way.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think it'll be cool for people to kind of see a different side of what it's like and hearing guys tell their story and what guys are doing, not only in the games but off the field and things like that. I think it'll be a huge part and be awesome for the fans to get to see a side of that.
All right, can't wait.
Look forward to it. The Quick Snap Podcast, from the players for the fans.
David, what's up, buddy?
Boy, what's up, baby?
10th preseason in the books.
Yeah.
How'd it go?
It was good. It's a lot of changes and, which is good. It's been good. And, it's kind of been cool to kind of see a different side of the fence, and as an older guy, even though I've been older, I always had like Slade or Dev or someone like you, a lot of very older. And now, I'm the most
That's you.
veteran player. So, it's
Yeah.
been interesting. But, it's been a good preseason. It's obviously a lot different than when I first came into the league. And different than when you came, obviously, and different things like that. How will they do cuts? All that. It's very, it's just changed a lot. So, but it's good. It feels good to wrap up number 10.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of change, right? Obviously, you've spent your entire career here. For me, I bounced around a lot of places, so I kind of saw a lot of different ways to do things. For you, your first training camp without Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just talk about the big elephant in the room is, the change from Bill to Jerod. And obviously, I know Jerod. We played together. We were freaking neighbors for a long time. I love Jerod. And for you, your perspective, you played. You were here with Jerod, right?
Yeah, I played with
So
him.
you played with him. So now he's your head coach. I mean,
Yeah.
what was it like going into those meetings, being like, man, I used to block this guy, and now he's my head coach?
I've been so blessed to be here for 10 years because I know that's not the career for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, hopefully I can say that whenever I'm done playing that I spent my whole time here. And, so that's obviously just to be here, be in the community, things like that is just unreal. And to make a home,
Yeah.
and obviously a lot of people love it. That's why, you're here now and, we've grown to love it. And, it was kind of weird, when it happened because I do remember playing with Jerod. I remember my first OTAs, our linebackers, Hightower, Collins, Jerod.
Yeah. It's a hell of a group.
Spikes.
Yeah,
I mean, they didn't have enough spots for him on the
Yeah.
field. And they're all like 6'4", 250.
Yeah.
I'm 6'2", 285. I was like, oh, man, this is going to be –
Undrafted, right?
yeah, this is
Undrafted
going to be
free
long.
agent.
And I remember Jerod trying to take people's head off. Jerod used to do scout team my rookie year, and I couldn't block him because he knew every play. And,
Yep.
which was great because it made me better. But it hasn't been that weird to me because he's been back as a coach.
Right.
So it wasn't like, oh, he left for 8 years and now he's back. So we've had whatever it is, 4 or 5 years working together indirectly, obviously. But, like I said, I've enjoyed it because it is kind of like seeing a new system, but all at the same time.
Right.
I know Jerod. Same time, I believe in a lot of the same things Jerod believes in football teams, which is, I think, is great because you can't sit there and say, oh, everything, Bill did was bad.
Sure.
Like there's
Obviously not.
No, there's never be a run of that success. Maybe is there things Jerod wants to do different as a head coach? Yeah, of course. And I think that's Jerod's finding his balance of like, all right, what do I believe in? And that, there's been things he said from our sayings of Bill's, and like.
Well, I mean, it's like osmosis, right?
Yeah, but
it's funny going to Vegas last year and my first experience of Josh as a head coach. I'd be sitting in those meetings and be like, God, I don't even think Josh is doing it on purpose. But there's just certain things that when you're around someone for so long, obviously Jerod is a player and a coach, that when you get up in front of that room, you just take that because it's something that comes naturally because you watched it happen. So many
and
times.
I think too, part of that is like no matter what. You don't want to look back on the past and be like everything was bad, but at the same time you don't want to be like, oh, I want to be this person. No, you got to find your own way, make your own way, but at the same time you don't want to take, you want to learn what they did and say how can I improve it, what can I do better, And things that Bill said are true. Those are truths in football, and maybe they're said all over the league. Obviously, I haven't heard that, but like at the same time, it's basic fundamentals of football.
Right.
Like we talk about all these systems, all this stuff. No one's reinventing the wheel in football. It's all the same for the most part, you know. And so I've really enjoyed that. I've enjoyed, and you know, as an older guy now, I hope to be part of the change, and hope to, you know, be part of the change, but also represent the past and represent a lot of the guys that I looked up to, and things that they believed in, and things I believed in throughout my whole career to get me here today. And so it's been really cool in that, and you know, and then obviously the whole new offensive staff for, you know, most of the part, my 9 years, it was the same system, maybe different people running the system, but it was the same system. And as an older guy, you know, having to learn and reteach yourself has been fun. It's been a fun challenge. You know, you've played in the West Coast systems. I've never been in those. And so
there's a lot of responsibility on you.
Yeah, which is great. And
you know, for people who don't know, in the system that we were both in for a long time, and obviously Tom was a huge key factor in that. He was kind of he directed where he wanted you to go, and then you spread the word out across the line. And so for now, having played in the West Coast system, that kind of all becomes on you, right?
Yeah, and it's great. And I think you always have to have that relationship though, because the quarterback's got to know his problems, right? And so they need to be able to recognize those and be able to change protections, whatever it may be. But Tom, it was always funny because he did run the show for the most part, and then I dispersed it. But every now and then he would kind of like have these brain farts, especially in the run game. And come up, hey, what do you want to do here? And I'd be like,
I know.
What do you want to do here? Like, we good? I'm like, yo, like, yeah, we're good. Like, are you all right? Like, you know, but
I have a funny story about that. So remember we went to play Jacksonville.
17.
Whenever we got crushed.
17.
Yeah, 17. And you know how it is. Like we weren't a team that scripted plays the first, but you know, West Coast, you're in that now, so where it's scripted. So we would always kind of know the first play. And I'll never forget this. It was 0 slot H42 ace. Yeah. That was the first play of the game.
Easy.
Easiest play. And literally we're about to run out and he goes, hey babe, do I re-mic that if the wheel walks? Not that you guys need to know, you know, the ins and outs, but it's like the simplest thing. It's like saying like
something he would have known.
Something he would know. And I was like, are you okay? Did you headbutt someone too hard in pregame? Like
it was early in the year, those pregame jitters.
Yeah, like, and I was like, this guy has won 5 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And he's asking me about the first play of the game, which I know he could do with his eyes closed.
Yeah.
But it's good that you had those experiences and now to kind of take the charge of the offense and doing those things, you know, I'm sure you'll learn a lot doing.
And it's great because obviously you were teammates with Jacoby too, and I was, you know, his first year in the league here. And so for me, kind of coming from, call it our system, and Jacoby knows that system too, to being in this system that he's already played in, you know, it's a great, like, hey, Jacoby, is this like this? Right. You know, like, this is how I'm thinking of it. Yeah, it's kind of like that, but this is why it's different. Yeah. So that's been great to have someone like that for me to understand what kind of, I tell people all the time, football's languages. It's not really big things. It's like some people speak Spanish, some people speak English.
That's how I've always described it. Like, if you're in the same language family, like Spanish and Italian, it's very similar, but then there's some families that are, it's like Spanish and Chinese. Yeah. And for me, that was always the hardest when there was nothing to relate it to at all. And, you know, unfortunately for me, the system that you knew your entire career was what I was brought up into. And I always thought, well, man, this is the best system. Yeah. And so sometimes I'd fight, if that was Spanish, sometimes I'd fight that Chinese system because it didn't really make a lot of sense in my head. And so, you know, that's the one thing people always ask, like, how long does it take an offense to gel in a new system? Well, how many people can relate to what they're doing and put it in their minds of something that they already knew?
Well, I think, you know, offense in general always is harder than defense.
Of course.
Because for an offensive play to be successful, you have to have 11 guys doing the right thing. Right. Josh always said that, and I believe it to this day. Like, for an offensive play to be successful, it has to take all 11 guys. You know, the quarterback's got to, or the center, whoever's got to set the protection. You got to block the blitzers, and receivers have to run the right route. Quarterback has to make a good read, make a good throw. Receivers have to make a great catch. Or vice versa, run game, got to block. Read. You could block a run right. If the running back misreads it, doesn't matter, you know. So
yeah, but conversely on defense, if two guys mess up but they're away from the play, no one would ever even know.
No, or if there's a blown coverage and someone gets a sack, it's like, what a great play.
Right, exactly.
You know, so I do think it takes time for offenses too, and I've seen it in our teams where, you know, I think in 18, right, like we were struggling toward the end of the year, we just couldn't find our identity, and then we started to say, all right, what are we good at? Right. All right, we're good at running the football. All right, let's line up. Let's play 2 tight ends. and let's make people stop us. And then now let's go from there and find out, who I think in the 18 Super Bowl, we found out the Rams weren't matching the personnel, they were matching the running back.
Right.
And then we started doing different things, going 5 wide from, things a set. If they were in sub, we're running the ball.
Right.
So, it does take time for offenses to gel and figure things out. And I think you see it throughout the year, right? Like some offenses start off super hot and then they get, they struggle at the end of the year. I think each week, it's about who gets better each week.
Right.
And then who can do that 17 to 20 games, I guess it is now, throughout the year to win it all. So, it's been great. I've really enjoyed learning our system. We're doing a lot of things different, which I like. I always liked the Browns run game a lot. I'd watch.
Helps when they have Nick Chubb too.
Yeah, Georgia boy. Give him a Georgia boy a shout out. But we've got really good backs and Ramondre and things like that. So, offense is all about getting your playmakers and trying to get them in space and put them in positions to win.
Yeah, the one thing I always remember, specifically Kyle Shanahan, because that's the coach that I had predominantly in the West Coast, was when he would talk about that outside zone run. Everybody who watches it, they think, oh, you just run outside, run outside, run outside. And Kyle's point was, say it was for lack of a better term, an 18-hole, 18 run. He would say, yeah, running back, you're going to go for the D gap. But once they close the D gap, now you're coming back to the C gap. Yeah. And now you're coming back to the B gap. Now you're the A gap. Now you're the backside A gap. Yeah. And the whole point of the offensive line was you keep running until one D lineman is out of their gap.
Yeah,
and then that's when you hit it.
I think any run game, too, you talk about, right? Like, it's not – very rarely, it's not Little League football, high school football, when you've got the fastest guy, you toss it to him around the edge, he goes 60 yards. I mean, that happens, obviously, but, like, a lot of it is, war by 1,000 cuts, right? Like 2 yards, 3 yards. And I think Dante always talked about, like, never get discouraged.
Right.
Don't let them discourage you in the run game because those 3 yards, if you're pounding on them, weighing on them, those 3-yard runs, second quarter might become 4-yard runs. Those 4-yard runs in the third quarter come 8-yard runs, and you keep – and eventually, right, you're just,
And on top of that, the one thing that I'll say about this system, and the thing that I love most about the system was 2-yard run, 3-yard run, 2-yard run, play action pass for 30.
Yeah.
That was, I mean, this is a philosophy that people around here are not going to be used to because in Josh's system, it was positive runs, drop back pass, positive runs, 12-play drives.
Yeah.
I mean, remember, that was the whole thing was let's not make any mistakes.
We were going to let you make a mistake.
We're going to let you make a mistake. Whereas at the West Coast system, from my experience, you don't get discouraged in the run because once they're all sucked up in the run, that's when you're hitting pop passes. Yeah. That's when you're hitting these play action passes. We saw Drake hit one the other night. I watched the game the other night, and that crossing pattern, that's all built upon the run game. And so the one thing Kyle always said was I always am shooting for 30 runs in a game because even if my average is 3 yards per carry,
If I'm
setting up 30-yard explosive pass plays, it's all worth it in the end.
I think when you look at Josh, like a lot of Gronk's production, right? The counter hot because we were running, we were pulling Tooney, running, 16 power and all.
I mean, that's going to get Gronk to the Hall of Fame.
And like all those plays, Julian, like you run like. Make him dig out of safety. Make him dig out of safety. Make him dig out of safety.
Just so everybody knows out there, to hear a center talk about this, his understanding. I mean, a lot of centers don't understand what you're talking about. And so I think that just speaks to your knowledge of offense and what you've learned over a 10-year career because of how demanding your position is. I mean, the fact that a center knows about Julian digging out of safety and then boom, all of a sudden we run a play action pass where he goes at the safety and slips him. I mean, that's pretty impressive for me to hear you say that. And I think people probably don't appreciate for a guy who has to touch the ball in every play with your head down. I always, when I was in the West Coast system, I was like, well, how's the center going to see the safety rotating down? But clearly, I'm talking to a guy who has played long enough, who sees a lot of things that allows him to spread that out to the guys across from him and even back to the quarterback.
Well, I think I just love the game of football. I can't play Madden or NCAA worth crap. I thought like 12.
I'm the same way. My son kicks my ass.
I hate it because I'm like, all right, like we got a good run, and then they just don't block the guys. I'm like, I set up a good run.
Right.
But besides the point, they, like that's one thing I always loved about Julian, and to me, like okay, whatever stats, Julian should be in the Hall of Fame for what he did for our football team.
100%.
And that that's not correct way to look at it for some people, but like Julian did all those things. A guy like Jacoby did all those things.
That's what I was going to say. Like Jacoby, I know this is a sore subject here in New England, but I was so thankful to have him out in Vegas with us last year because he brought that toughness to a wide receiver room that Julian brought for so many years, and he was rewarded for it. I think that's the one thing is you talk about guys like Julian who then paved the way for Jacoby,
or like a West that paved it for Julian.
I mean, you're gonna have to go in there and dig out safeties and all those things, but you will be rewarded in the end. And on top of that, I mean, by the end of the year last year, it was pretty clear Jacoby Myers was a top 20 receiver in the NFL, and now you look at the situation here with Juju being released. And they could have signed Jacoby back for the same amount of money. It's just, to me, that's, a testament to Jacoby and what he learned here and then took it somewhere else to become a leader on a team.
And I think you talk about a tough football team, right? It's not just your O-line.
Yep.
It's not just your O-line or your D-line that makes the football team tough. Like, it has to be everything. And to say, oh, we have a tough O-line, that's great.
Yep.
But is that receiver going to go, is your star receiver going to go dig out that guy?
Right.
Because that's tough for him. Right, catching the ball and doing all that is great. And there's certain guys, like I wouldn't want Randy Moss to go dig out a safety.
Yep.
Like I want him to run a 60-yard
post. There's certain guys who do it.
Yeah, but like for that to do, and you need those guys on your football team to do that stuff. And as an offensive lineman, when you see a guy do that, or you see a back step up in blitz protection and just nail a linebacker, like you have so much respect and appreciate, like James White. Like I have the utmost respect for James 100%. White for how he played the game. And you can say toughness is this, toughness is that. I think there's different aspects to toughness. And was James the most physical player? No. I mean, he was, a smaller back, but he was so tough because he would do all the dirty work, do what needed to be done, and you could depend on him and count on him. Yeah. And that's what makes a great teammate. And I think, when you have guys like that in a lot of different positions, it's really special. And I think, I've been very blessed to say I've had that before, and that's what we're working to now. And I don't think I realized, and maybe you realized how special what we had was.
I realized it because I was away, and I saw what it was, and then I had the opportunity to come back. Yeah. And two very different eras, I would say. When I was here, my first 4 years was kind of that in-between Super Bowl era. But it was what I knew. And then I got a chance to go off, play some on my own, be the starting quarterback a few places, and I was like, man, if we only had the culture that I was brought up in New England, and then I had the chance to get back, and I never wanted to leave. And some of it is like the abused child. Like, look, playing for Bill, and he would say it himself. He goes, it's tough to play for me. I'm an asshole sometimes, a lot of times. Yeah. But it made us better. And I always say, I think what it did was it brought the players closer together because we were all going through it together. Yeah. And going back to like you being here and being one of the old guys now, one of the things I remember, leaving, and when I left, it was still like Matt Light and Tom, Logan, and then I came back, and now all of a sudden the leaders were Slater, Hightower, Devin, you, guys that were young when I left, but now had become the old guys, and now here you are, the oldest guy, the one who's been through the fire with winning Super Bowls, having some down years, years that I was here with you. And, I remember seeing you after that game last year when we played each other, and I could just tell it was just draining. You were drained. I mean, physically, mentally, all those things. And so now to, bring it back to the coaching change in Jerod, one of the things I found interesting this preseason covering some of this media stuff was, Jerod kind of pushing back on this players coach narrative. And we asked him about it, and he said, I don't want to be a players coach. I just want to be a good coach. Yeah. And I think he looks at it like people look at him like he's being soft on the players, which I know he's not. The way I kind of look at it is you're a players coach because you're a former player and you understand what it's like to sit in those seats. And
I think the players coach thing's such a weird terminology to me, and I don't think – because there was times I would say Bill had a good grasp of what was going on and when to push and when to – I remember in 2018, right, we had – you have the bye week before the Super Bowl, right? We'd just gone to Kansas City. It was freaking 12 degrees. It was. I thought Dante was going to have a freaking, episode. He was running in between the heater and the sideline in between plays to try to warm up. Yep. I was worried about him. And, so we just went to overtime game, ran the ball like 30-something times. Yep. We were beat. Yeah. We were beat up. And remember we came in, Dante was like, hey, we're going to have a full pad day. That Wednesday was a grind. Yep. And Thursday, he's like, get through Wednesday. Thursday is going to be a normal kind of down, or Thursday. Friday, obviously, is Friday. We get in Thursday morning. Dante's like, yeah, we're in full pads again. And you could feel the life get sucked out of the O-line. I mean, we were just exhausted. We were tired, man. And, he kind of told us. And so I remember that. And we went out there that Thursday, and we had to grind. And it was a tough day. And everyone was – we were telling Tom, like, Tom, we're beat.
Yeah.
Like, we're spent, man. And we go to Atlanta, and we barely practiced that week.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, wow, like,
It was one of the most.
He's got a grip on. He understands. No one talked to Bill. I didn't go talk to Bill.
Right.
But like he understood and
through
saw
the grapevine.
like,
he knew.
Yeah, and he saw like, all right, I killed him there. They got it. We weren't playing, obviously. We had a couple days to rest over the weekend, and then we got to Atlanta. It was like one shell day, two in helmets, and
I remember thinking how laid back it was that week.
Yeah.
Even like
but we had put in so much work the week before.
Yeah, and I think,
so it kind of made sense, and like I've always.
The experience on that team, though, was unprecedented.
Yeah, I mean, true.
Like, I remember that was kind of the time when Tom was stepping away from the off-season stuff so he could be with his family and friends. So it was a great opportunity for me. Yeah. But in reality, like, we barely practiced in the off-season. Yeah. I mean, you had a majority.
That was the thing. Like, everyone was like, oh, Bill.
Yeah.
Like, we usually, did like 10 of the off-season practices?
Yeah.
Took one day.
Yeah. I mean, that year, I think we did 5.
Yeah.
Because we did a lot of, like, the team of teams, like the team building stuff. But I think he realized, like, the majority of that roster had just played – AFC Championship game, Super Bowl
for like 3-4 years in a row.
they'd played. A lot of those players, including you, had played almost a whole extra season. Yeah. And I think he understood that, like, okay, the off season we don't have to grind. Yeah. And
we did in different ways, whether it was weight room, conditioning, all that stuff. I mean, I remember like our phase 2 to me was always harder than OTAs.
Yeah,
Dante was killing us. Yeah. The conditioning was killing us, and then we were running plays on air for. Yeah. I was like, man, phase 2 is harder than practicing.
Practice
OTAs.
was easy. Yeah.
So the player coach thing, I wouldn't sit there and be like, oh yeah, Jerod's a player coach.
But the thing that I would say, and you see this around the league, okay, Jerod, Campbell in Detroit, AP in Vegas, which I was there through that transition. I'm escaping his name's escaping me right now. Down in Houston, linebacker.
Yes.
D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah.
And so you're kind of seeing the shift of younger former players who are becoming Vrabel head coaches. And the one thing that I'll say is, what I witnessed in Vegas was, look, if Bill was a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10, is 10 being the biggest asshole, Josh was like a 2 or a 3. And the players out in Vegas, especially the young guys, some of the bigger name guys, they didn't want to have low lights. They thought the schedule was long. Well, and I think you're seeing a generation of players that say either show me how much you care about me or at least know what I'm going through and I'll respect you. And I think that's the one thing about Jerod, and I think what will make him a great coach is he learned from Bill. He puts his own spin on it. But when you sit in that meeting room and he's up there talking to you, I think you look at him and say, I know he knows what it's like to be in this seat. And I think a younger generation of player can relate to that more than someone who I feel like you either have to go the Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, young guy, energetic, enthusiastic route, or be a former player to really resonate with today's players.
I just think it all goes back to like leadership, right? And you have to know, all right, this guy is this, right? Like there's certain things Jerod doesn't have to say to me because he knows I'm going to take care of what I got to take care of.
Yep.
And like, there's going to be times where he's going to have to get on to me and do those things, and I expect him to. I want him to, in whatever setting it may be, because as a player, personally, I think you should want your coach to demand the most out of you.
100%.
And I think that's something I witnessed with Dante, right? Like, we win a Super Bowl, and that like first week back, Dante would pull the 5 starters into the room and just lay into us. And you're still kind of like, call it hungover, from the off-season week, everything else, and you're like, but you needed that, and I still think there's days I need to be coached. I want to be coached. I want you to tell me if it's messed up, like, because the shit, like, when is messed up, I need to know so I can correct it,
right? So
it doesn't show up on Sunday and I'm getting beat or letting my team down, whatever it may be. And so I think as a coach and as a leader, you gotta find ways to connect with different guys, and maybe every approach isn't the same with the same guy.
Yeah.
And you gotta know, hey, this guy's this guy this, whatever it may be. And I think that's a huge thing as a head coach, and I think Jerod being he's just a great natural leader.
Yeah.
And he'll find that out. He'll find it, and he'll create the identity he wants for his football team.
Yeah.
And hopefully, I can be a part of that and help.
Well, I think you're going to. I mean,
that.
obviously, they redid your contract.
Yeah.
They want you to be around, and I know you and I have talked about before, like how great it is for you and your family to be on one team.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, you realize a lot of people's careers not like that, but I think that just shows. I was talking to one of my son's baseball dads, telling him we were going to do this show, and I told him I was doing it with you. He's like, "Oh, I love that guy," and I think, I said to him, he's one of my top 5 all-time favorite teammates. Obviously, our friendship, but you just hit on it before, like dependability, toughness. I've never met someone, a center that I've never had that's more. When I got up on there under center, I was like, I know he's got control of it. The same way you think about James White in pass protection, the same way we all thought of Tom Brady at playing quarterback. And I think that just shows to you a testament of who you are for you. I mean, going into your 10th year at center, and they're saying, we need this guy back. We're going to pay him what he deserves. And, from here to the future, you're one of the cornerstones of Jerod's, coaching career because – like you mentioned before, you've been around, you've seen it, and you're one of the guys that everybody's going to look to as part of whatever this new culture is.
Yeah, and I think, the culture and things like that, it's not built overnight, and it does take time. And, it's going to take time for him to build the roster the way he wants it with the people he wants it. And, it's not just about talent. And obviously you have to have good players to win. There's no, you can't sit there and say that. Like when we won Super Bowls, it wasn't like,
right.
We had bad teams. No, maybe we obviously had the greatest quarterback. But maybe we didn't have the best this or best that. But if you looked at it all across the board, it didn't feel like there was a weakness.
No, it was all solid players.
Yeah, it was like, all right, maybe, this guy's not a quote unquote superstar, but he's a great player.
And they all played well together.
Yeah. And that's what it is. That's what success is. It's, you can say the same thing about, what Kansas City's done. They lose Tyreek Hill and they still have success.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't have, they have the greatest quarterback right now and, arguably the best tight end in the game and all these things, which I think we could say about our teams.
Yeah.
And, and then it's kind of like, all right, but they just have really good players across the board. And obviously, I think to have that success, you have to have some good culture, you know. And
I think the culture becomes the best teams that I've been on. Obviously, the Patriots teams. Yeah. The culture is run by the players.
It is. It is 100%. And I think,
And as a coach, you got to get to a point where you have the right players to do that.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, in our profession, it's a "what have you done for me lately" business. And so it's like, how much time are you going to give that coach to establish that culture with the right players? I kind of laughed last year. People were talking about the Bills and fire Sean McDermott. I'm thinking to myself, you've literally lost the Patriots for all these years. Now he's flipped the script. You've got Josh Allen there. Yeah, I get it. They haven't made it to a Super Bowl, but we both know how hard it is to get to a Super Bowl. And the reality is, if you get to the playoffs every year, you have a chance.
Yeah, that's all you can ask for.
And the one thing that always hit me was Bill was like, listen, 31 teams are all going to end their year on a shitty note. Yeah, crash landing. And one team gets to win the Super Bowl.
I literally said that the other day, I think, in an interview, because that's the truth. It's like, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Like I did in 17 when we got our AFC rings. I was like, great, thanks.
It's also from the perspective of having won.
No, yeah, but like, because I agree with you. I know what you mean. You know what that next thing is, and you know how close you were. You know how.
Well, I always said, like, it's like if you lose in the Super Bowl, you might as well have not even made the playoffs because it's the same result. Yeah,
and I can. People always ask me, "Oh, isn't it so tough losing the Super Bowl?" And I think in 17, no matter what, win or lose or draw, there's like a sigh of relief because you're like, "Think it's over." Yeah. Like all the pain, all the like for a second you can breathe. Yeah. And when you're in the Super Bowl and when you're in, it's such a high stress year. You're whatever you want to say. I'm not a doctor, but the cortisol and all that stuff. I mean, your body's wrecked. Mm-hmm. And so there's just this weight that's off of you for a minute. I can remember in 17 we lost, and I was pretty upset. I got to the Super Bowl party.
That was the first one you ever lost.
Yeah, and I got to the Super Bowl party, and I always took like 8 or 10 buddies with me. It was ridiculous. I walked into the party. They were obviously been drinking they probably hadn't stopped since the night before. And, I walked in, one of my buddies, I was like, I don't want to be here. I want to go home. Yep. I want to go.
I didn't even go.
And my buddy handed me a double Jack and Coke and was like, well, drink that
And see how you feel.
And maybe one more, and let's see how it goes. And we ended up staying. We ended up having a great time, a great night. Because, there's celebratory is not the right word because I hate losing, and it's the worst. But like I said, there's just this sigh of relief. And then I can remember in 17, get done and you got to leave the next day, and it's kind of like wrap up the year, trash bag the locker.
Well, that was, remember when my son, you took him up to the bagel shop at the
hotel.
airport. He's like, remember David went and got me a egg sandwich at the airport.
Yeah, but so it's such a whirlwind that I'll never forget watching the parade. And even then, because we used to go home a little bit early in my career, so we're trying to get home. But I never forget being back up here in, call it whatever, June, and laying on the couch one Friday night, and I'm seeing the Eagles ring ceremony come up on, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever, and you're just like, shit.
Yeah.
And that's when it really hit me for whatever reason, because it doesn't feel real. It just doesn't feel real. And the minute you get that ring, you're like, all right,
yeah,
it's real.
Yep.
We did this, and the ring ceremonies were always the best to me because, you had guys that left, went to other teams, but everyone's back. After
one night,
after the party, the party after the Super Bowl, it's so hard to see teammates.
Yeah, it's chaotic.
It's just chaos. People are everywhere, and there's fans in there.
I always joke, people don't understand. After the Super Bowl, it's pure chaos.
Yeah.
You're trying to find your family. Literally after we beat the Rams,
and you don't have any direction.
I walked home through the crowd with I thought to myself, an hour ago, I was just celebrating on the field the Super Bowl win, and here I am walking back with
downtown
the people
Atlanta.
that were the fans.
Yeah,
it's almost like high school football.
Yeah, it's such a weird experience. But that ring ceremony is so special because it's everyone in the organization.
Yep.
Whether it's the
video guys,
the trainers, the equipment guys, all the people that actually do all the hard work for us, that's, serve us and help us and do all the things that don't get the glory. They're all there, and they have such a huge part in it. You're with each other's families and wives, and it's just, I've always thought the ring ceremony is the most special part of winning. And like I said, because it's tangible, then you've got your hand. But I remember we got our rings in 17, and we're in the team room. They're calling us up. Bill's just like,
yeah.
We get in the O-line room. Dante's like, well, I can tell you what, you might as well throw that ring in the trash because all it is a loser's trophy. And, that always stuck with me. And Dante was extreme at times.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he's right because it's 31 teams, a crash landing.
Yep.
It doesn't matter, and you can't. The moment you start hanging your hat on and like, oh, we made it.
Yeah.
That don't matter. It
was funny but you mentioned Dante because my first Super Bowl loss was the second Giants Super Bowl. And that was my third year in the NFL. I'm like, you talk about crash landing. I was so upset. I'm like, man, I'll never get back. I'll never. And the next morning, getting up to go to the airplane to fly back, and I went to go get breakfast, and Dante's down there just eating his oatmeal. He's like, well, we'll try again next year. I mean,
Dante was, I have maybe said a little bit of the extremes of Dante, but he had such a great grasp on everything. That's why he was the best, in my opinion, the best position coach to ever do it. But I've
never seen a coach who could really get after his players, and all of his players adored him.
Yeah.
And he used to get after my ass because you talk about coming up to the center
the wrong
and be like, hey,
point.
Oh, I'd make the wrong mic point. He would say, oh, you dumb mother.
Yeah.
It's over there. And then he'd come up and he's like, it's okay, you'll figure it out. He has such a way to be endearing, but also be demanding in the same.
I'll never forget. He was so sweet, and me and Dante have a great relationship. We get breakfast every off season. We still talk, and I'll never forget him just screaming at us in practice, yelling at us, and then our families are there at training camp, and hey Mackenzie, how are you? And I'd be like, what?
Yeah. You just dog cussed me out there in front of my wife.
that was that's what made him so special, and he just did have such a great grasp on it and all that. So
bringing it back to this year, your leadership role, preseason over, we're filming this on the day that got to get down to the roster. Anybody new, free agent or rookies that stood out to you this year? Obviously with the preseason changes, 3 games, you guys did a joint practice with the Eagles. The opportunities get smaller and smaller for someone to make a name for themselves. Is there anybody in your mind that stood out?
Yeah, I think it's hard, and I think we do whatever's been said about the preseason, for vets and things. I think we do a disservice to rookies.
Yeah.
with the time that the veterans don't need certain things.
Well, I don't know how it was for you, but I needed that fourth game to make the team.
I did. I mean, I think I was, looking back, I was pretty well slated to make the team.
Yeah.
But I played almost the whole game in the fourth one.
I started the whole fourth preseason game and had to have a good performance to feel like I was going to be
at
on
that
the
time, you're trying out for 31 other teams too.
Exactly.
But, I think there's certain things that obviously as a veteran player, I'm like, oh, that's good. Like, yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
As a young guy, I think it's harder, and we're not doing a great service to young players.
100%.
And it's harder to develop young players. Granted, I don't know if that means we need to go back to two-a-days. I don't think that's the answer. But, just some of the things but really, really enjoyed getting to work with a lot of these rookies.
Yeah.
Up front, Layden Robinson, kid from Texas A&M, guard. He's really done a good job, and he's a tough kid. He's very hardworking. And as a veteran, you just want a rookie that wants to be a sponge, right? Let me soak up everything I can. I think he's done a really good job. Jalen Polk, guy receiver, another good kid, really liked him. He was in there, today was off day, but went in there and worked out this morning and stuff, and I actually kicked him off the treatment table so I could get some, but
Love it.
Felt pretty good.
That's right.
But,
that's senior privilege.
Yeah, he took it great, and
privilege.
I didn't take his spot. I just had a spot at a different time and moved my spot to his, so I wasn't bullying. But, he was great, and he was in there working out this morning, and I think you want to see guys be a pro, right? Because I don't need to hold your hand anymore.
Yeah, you're a grown man now.
Yeah, now this is your job.
Yep.
And there's no more red shirts. There's no more.
Right.
Granted, now every rookie's not going to play, and there are guys that are going to develop and things like that. And but being there on your Tuesday off day, getting working out.
I saw you the other day when he made that catch, just sprint out on the field.
Yeah, I was trying to help him up.
Tennis shoes, had your pads on.
Trying to help him up, but he's done a great job for us. Drake's really done a great job.
Yep.
Obviously kind of seen some of his progress throughout the year. It's hard because you're not game planning. You're not doing all these things.
I think people don't understand the preseason. Like when they see a preseason game, we may be practicing a bunch of, harder, more in-depth stuff. But when you get to the game, it's like, all right, listen, we don't want to show anything.
No.
We're going to keep it very simple. And sometimes that's good because the other team keeps it simple, and it's like, all right, we're playing football. Yeah. But other times, the scheme doesn't match up.
No, and so much goes into
game
offensively,
planning.
Game planning's huge.
Right.
Because offensively, you're going to run, hey, this motion, this formation in the first quarter. Let's see how they play it. All right, they gave us cover one.
Yep.
All right, now we're going to set this up to get this mismatch in the third quarter, which is so different than any other sport. I'm friends with a lot of hockey guys, and we talk, and they're like, oh, we practice for 20 minutes a day. And I'm like,
I know.
20 minutes is our warm up, but you're doing all these things to get that one play.
It's so schematic
in that one situation to hit that play, and you run it 6 times that week, walk through it another 4, whatever it is, and so that's I love the offensive side of gameplay. I know defense goes into it too, but I don't play defense, so
it was funny doing the preseason games with the McCourties.
Yeah,
they wanted me to kind of expand on what the young quarterbacks. These guys haven't called plays in the huddle for 4. Joe Milton said he hadn't called a play in a huddle since he was 17 years old. Yeah, and so I brought out my old Cleveland Browns playbook that I had from Kyle and rattled off a play. And Devin's like, man, can't you just make it over invert?
That's what they call over 3 stack.
Yeah,
what?
I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way because we have to tell everybody what they have to do.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to have a formation, a motion. The line needs to know, is it a pass protection or run?
You're talking about the developmental of young players, right? And kind of in this question, I do think the game's changing so much at lower levels.
Yeah.
That it's doing a disservice to them there as much as maybe, or it's harder for them to come here. Because I remember when I was at Georgia, Mike Bobo was our offensive coordinator. He's now the coordinator there. We ran pretty much Josh's system.
Yeah.
So, Josh, 64 was 3-by-1, which is a pass play formation.
Yep.
And we called it 6-64. So we didn't change, because we would call 66 2-by-2.
Yeah.
So we changed 4 was 2-by-2, 6 was 3-by-1. So it'd be 6-6-4 or 6-6-2.
Yeah.
And we ran the same.
But for people who don't understand what you're saying, it was a lot more complicated for you at Georgia than what these guys are dealing with.
So when I
today.
got here, though, when I got
ready.
here to see Josh's offense, I had to learn so much. I was not like, oh, this is easy.
Right.
But I could be like, oh, like this is like this.
Like
this
you talked about before, relating it to something else.
And like, when you're in college, you see a lot of times, right? Like, boom, go to the huddle. Everybody does this, looks at the sideline. They hold up a picture of Miley Cyrus or whoever, and then everyone knows what to do. And like that's very different in the college or in the NFL.
Which kind of tells you, it kind of shows you like doing a disservice. It kind of shows like why hasn't that made the leap to the NFL? Because it doesn't work in the NFL because the players are too good. The coaches want to have the input and a lot of game plan stuff. And it's funny. I was talking to someone and they said, because of like the 7-on-7 culture, you're not seeing as many good defensive, especially back end players as you used to, because everyone wants to go to 7-on-7. They want to touch the ball. So they want to play receiver. They want to play tight end. So you're seeing more of those better athletes on the offensive side of the ball until people realize they can't catch, and then that they put them back over in the defense.
Yeah, I don't know. It's maybe it's just my old guy complaining now, ways things are done. If Georgia keeps winning national championships, they can show how many pictures they want. But no, Mike's now, I haven't really talked to him about it, but his offense is very different.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to him about it because we had a great relationship when I was there. And I loved his offense, had a lot of success in it at Georgia. And like I said, I've always said in interviews, like I think that helped me prepare to come play in the NFL. And so I do want to talk to him. I need to at some point. I don't get down there much, but I would love to sit down and just like, because they're not running that same system. So like, what is it? What are you guys doing? Just so I have a better idea.
I think you got to adapt because like they don't have the bandwidth. They don't have the attention span to be able to sit there and say, listen, we're going to install this. Nope, you got to make it. I was talking to an offensive coach who was basically saying, like, we have studies, like the attention span is like 15 minutes before people start to wander. And that's the culture and generation we live in is you want everything now, you want it direct. And remember, I'm sure for when you first started, we used to have these marathon meetings.
Oh,
like
no,
hour and a half
I think
meetings.
I was literally just about to say that. I don't know how we ever prepared and ran plays right in college. Because we literally, now everyone's like, oh, like, hey, what was your day? Like when I first came in the league, like, what'd you guys do today? It's like, oh, I got there around 6:30 and then left around 6:37. Call it normal week, not training camp. And they're like, oh, like, what did you do all day? I'm like, well, we were in meetings from 8 to 12.
Yeah.
And then we practiced from 1 to 3. And then I was in meetings again from 4 to 5:30. And they're like, what?
Yeah. No one understands that.
I'm like, yeah, like we're in like 6 hours of meetings a day with a 30-minute walkthrough. And like, I look back at college and it was like,
yeah, you didn't have time because people had class.
No, you lifted in the morning, lifted in the morning usually. 8 a.m. you were in class.
Yep.
8 to 12 were in class. Maybe a tutor at some point during the day. And then like 2 to 3 you met and you practiced from like 4 to 6, no meetings after. Yep. And then you had study hall or tutors or whatever and you were done. And I was thinking about it. I was like, how did we ever run a play? Like it takes us, all these meetings, all these walkthroughs.
Right.
You didn't have that in college. And it's funny. But and I think that's a big change for guys when they get into the NFL is like these marathon. I remember like, to me, that's what makes the days hard is because like you're just in these meetings and those practices, whatever, like that's fun. Like we get to go out. It's like recess.
I know. But that was always my favorite part because back in the old day before they redid even still now, you don't see the sunlight until you're at practice. And then you come back in and here in New England, by the time you leave in October, November, it's dark again. So it's literally the only time you see the sun is at
I'll never
practice.
Forget. My wife had moved up, and my rookie year, I got benched Monday Night Football. I'll never forget it against the Bills. Tom was yelling at me. So I was down. I was mad, and I was embarrassed. And my wife had just moved up here, and it was a big change for her because in college we all hung out.
Right.
Like guys didn't have
you
family.
don't do that as much
No,
anymore.
guys have families. Guys have off-field, I got to, what are you doing tonight? Oh, I got to go to this marketing thing. Like, whatever. I got my body coach coming up. Like, whatever guys do. Mm-hmm. Like, and you don't live together, like, really, you know? Like, so it was a little bit of a change for my wife, and it was hard on her because she thought it was going to be like college.
Right.
And, when she got here, like, a lot of the guys I came in with were single. And then, she was really close with, like, Nate, Lexi Solder, Seabass's wife, Paige, but they were great, but they had kids.
Right.
And now we're kind of on that side of the fence. Yep. And
it's amazing how things shift, right?
Yeah.
Because when you become an older player and you have your kids, it's like there's only a few select people that are in the same lifestyle era as you, as opposed to like last year, I'm 38. I'm the oldest by far. And out in Vegas, it was a young team. I mean, there was no one who had any kids my age, and trying to, having been here for so long, trying to find a new friend group. Yeah. It's tough, and it's just people, different life cycles. And
it's hard, being a dad, because you're like, all right, I'm gone.
Yep.
Like we left Saturday morning. I left before our sons were up.
Yep.
So I didn't see him Saturday. Saw him a little Friday afternoon. Got home Monday at like 4 a.m. Saw my son for like an hour that morning. Then I came into work. So like you only get so much time off.
Yeah. Where you're not going to spend it with your boys when you have.
Yeah,
your
you're
kids.
like trying to find this balance of like, all right, like what are we doing as a team? I want to try to see my kids, be there for them.
Take your wife out for a
dinner.
Take
my wife to dinner, and like there's a lot more strings that pull on you in the NFL to do things, and
I always thought it was
that's
funny.
A weird balance.
You talk about getting back at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
I always made it a point to make sure that I was up to take the kids to school.
Yeah.
And I remember pulling up to school and the principal being like, "Weren't you just in LA last night?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, but I mean, if I don't take them to school right now, I'm not going to see them until 6 o'clock tonight." Right. Yeah. So it's like, not that we want anyone to feel sorry for us. It's just an insight of like how things go. And you talk about, life as an NFL player. I remember as a rookie, we had a good group of rookies and we all lived over at the lodge in Foxborough. And we would get together because none of us had kids. And then eventually, like, I had a kid. They didn't have a kid. Like, I had to spend time doing that. I couldn't go out with it. Was just, it's different. It's different than college.
Yeah, that's, I think, too, we had a good time my first few years in the league because I was married early. And, guys like Shaq and Joe, weren't married. And, Ted had a girlfriend, and then they got engaged and been married now. But, we found a good way of, like, mixing of, like, all right, Bill would give us like random 2-day nights off in training camp. All right, let's go out. Let's take our wives.
Yep.
Like everyone and it was great because everyone could bring the wives, do all that. Mm-hmm. And, it was good because you were kind of nailing that, playing both sides of the fence.
Time, right.
Like, hey, I'm taking my wife out, but like I'm also with the boys, and like that stuff's great. That's what, that's part of the reason you love the game is those relationships. And
but the thing that I miss the most is the guys.
Yeah.
I mean, not having training camp has been pretty cool, but I come to watch you guys a few days at camp, and the thing that I miss is playing football, the act of playing football, going out throwing the football around, taking snaps, messing around, and just the camaraderie that is built in that you take for granted. Yeah. And then once it's gone, it's gone. And luckily for me, I still live here, and I have, guys like you, Hunter, Jacoby, Hooper. We had a good, Boo-Ray night this summer, but so I can kind of have that a little bit, but not on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, it's, I think that's always a big change when, the time comes. Yeah. And, I think no matter what you do after football, there's nothing to recreate a locker room.
Never.
And
half the stuff we say in there, we would be sent to HR quickly. Like,
and just
it's a different world.
And there's something about going through hard things with each other,
right?
And struggling with each other, right? Like going through that struggle together, because that's, you think about marriage, right? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't be that close to your wife if everything was great every day.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's not how you grow. That's not how you. But like those hard times in your marriage or relationship, whatever it is, like that's where you grow together. Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things, and obviously we were there together at Tom's Hall of Fame induction, was his statement about football is hard.
Yeah.
And I've made my son, he was there, and he looks at Tom like. He looks at Tom and he looks at you like everybody, all of his friends would be like, "Oh my God, and he's like, "Oh, that's just my dad's friend." Yeah. He doesn't see it the same perspective as the kids in New England would. Yeah. But I've made him watch that part of Tom's speech over and over again because he's going to play tackle football for the first time this year, and I'm telling him, he thinks it's going to come easy. He's like, "What? I watch you at practice. It's not that hard." I said, "Trust me, there's going to be days where you wake up and every muscle's sore, the neck is sore, but." Life is hard, and being able to persevere through those things, and like you said, persevere through them together with a group of guys you really care about, is what really creates, what's special about the NFL.
Yeah, and I think, I everyone always asks me like, oh, like I'm sure you probably gotten the same thing, like you're gonna let Garrett play football, Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with playing football. Football is the greatest game on this earth, and yeah, there's injury risk, but like growing up, we used to ride our bicycles every year. I'll never forget. I had one of my best friends got hit by a car riding his bike. Thank God, he was fine.
Yep.
You know, I think he had hurt his leg, but like you can get hurt doing anything in this world, and you know, I think the game's trying to get as safe as it can, and you'll never be able to fix that. But like, there's so much. If I never played it down in the NFL, that Little League football taught me from a confidence issue. Like as a kid, I was a bigger kid, and I got to find a purpose. And like, you know, like it's not okay being big. Like, you know, you don't want to be unhealthy, but like I have a purpose.
Yeah, you belong somewhere.
I belong somewhere, and like I learned so much. I was a bigger, like I said, and I had this coach named Joe Chappell. I'll never forget him to this day. He'd make us do like bear crawls.
Yeah,
and at the time, I didn't see it, but looking back, you know, I was like, I learned that was so much growth for me.
You learned a lot about yourself.
To learn about myself. Am I going to quit? Am I going to keep going? And you know, and there was times my dad was a big baseball guy. And I wasn't good at baseball. I love baseball, but I just wasn't good at it, and that drove me and my dad apart because he was hard on me. And I couldn't respond, and I couldn't fix it. You know, but when football came in, he was hard on me. All right, watch this. You know what I mean?
Because
like,
you fit in. It was
and
your
like
thing.
that was my thing. And I think, you know, he learned that, and I learned that, and you know that it was a huge part of our relationship. And you know, but I think it's just the greatest game on this earth. And you know, there's no doubt if Ford doesn't want to play, I'm not going to force him to play the game, because I don't think that's unhealthy. But like if he wants to play, I have no reservations in playing. You know, and I do think it doesn't matter when you start to play. It's one of those games where like
I was talking to Devin and Jason, and I think it was Devin's son, or it was Jason's son. They are now doing fully padded flag football, which I think is a phenomenal idea for these younger kids.
The pads.
Figure out how to carry your pads. You don't have the risk of injury. You're teaching really the game of football in a more controlled
how to break
environment.
down and tackle. Like,
and I've always thought, like, you know, what a great idea that would be. And so to see that implemented is great. Obviously, we see the Guardian caps, people wearing them now in the games. I think there's a concerted effort to make it more safe, and that's great. But like to your point, I think you learn so much if you never play it down in the NFL or in college, just about yourself, about, you know, relationships, how to work together with people. And I think the one thing that is great about football is it doesn't matter who you are, where you came from. I've met the wildest people because of my football journey. You know, guys from Alabama or from Georgia like you, or Alabama like Ben Jones, who I knew was a guy that you looked up to guys who were from, you know, the streets of
New York
LA,
City.
New York City, Cleveland, and none of that matters when you're all working towards a common goal, which has been great because you get to meet some really great people that way.
It is funny though, because like Tom started high school. Slater, who I think is one of the best football players I've ever been around, started in high school, and then like I said, I know a lot of these hockey guys and work out with them, and I'm like, yo, like when did you start? They're like 3 years old, and I'm like, they're like, oh dude, if you don't start by 5, you're so far behind. And football's, I don't think me starting at 6 years old had any impact on my NFL journey. But like it was funny just hearing them be like, dude, you got it. Like, because I talk about my son, I was like, yeah, I think it'd be fun if he played hockey. I don't know much about it. Like,
well, you're in the right area for it.
Yeah, like, and like, okay, like you go watch bad hockey. I don't know what like great hockey is to begin with, so who cares, you know? Like, and I won't be one of those like parents of like, he shouldn't tell you to do that. Don't listen to the coach, you know? Which I hope I'm not one of those parents.
Just wait.
But like hockey, I wouldn't be like, I'd be like, I guess he's right, man. Do that. You know, but it's funny hearing them be like, dude, he's got to start. And I'm like,
I guess hockey though, you have to be able to skate. So if you don't start skating early,
that's what they said. It's not necessary. Like it's the skating and stick handling that is so different. But
like to your point, football. We had a kid in Vegas last year, part of this international program, and he was from, and I don't want to say the wrong country, but he was from a country in Africa. Had only ever played basketball his entire life, and he was like one of those, you know, like the feel-good players in the preseason. Because the guy's literally playing football for the first time in his life in the NFL. And he played defensive end.
And they don't count on a roster spot.
No, and so it was a great opportunity for him. But like to watch his development
is awesome.
And he was around some good players on the D line. Then he learned a lot of. And I'll never forget him getting a sack in that last preseason game. And the whole team goes. And like that just shows you like how football not only brings people together but gives people opportunities. And you know, it was just one of those things. By the end of the year, you watch him, you're like, wow. You know. never played football his life, one season in the NFL, like he could belong here.
That's something I've enjoyed as I've gotten older in the league, is watching young guys have success.
Yeah.
And like a guy like City Sal, who played guard for us last year, we were in training camp, and I was hard on him as a rookie.
Yeah.
He's playing next year. I demand a lot, because that's what was demanded of me from guys like Tom.
Yep.
I came in with Ryan Wendell. He killed me. Seabass was so hard on me. Like, they demanded the best out of me every day. And so I've always tried to do that to guys, because that's for you to have success, they got to be good. Mm-hmm. So, but I remember we were running a play this preseason. It was like a blitz that he recognized it and knew what was happening and knew the responses. And that's, there's obviously the response of all right, here comes the play, but it's all right, seeing this linebacker's this a little bit wider, this guy's tighter. They're about to do this. I need to change my footwork to be ready for this.
Well, and the communication,
and seeing that, and him realizing it and responding how I wanted him to respond was huge. And I was told him after. I went up to him in the locker room after, gave him a big hug. I was like, dude, that was awesome. Yeah. That one play, whatever happened the rest of the day, I didn't care.
Yep.
That one play, because that's the growth and development you want to see from a year 1 to 2 player, right? And that stuff gives me a lot of joy in my older age.
Well, I think to wrap this up, I mean, talking about your 10th season, we've already talked about the coaching change. I mean, we always never want to talk about expectations, right? But for you as a leader of the team, maybe not so much expectations, but just what you're looking for heading into the season. Obviously, you know what a grind it is, but what would it be, for you to look back on this year and be like, man, I'm really proud of the foundation that we set in Jerod's first year. Because, for me, I remember going back to my college days, Michigan State, my first year starting was Coach Mark D'Antonio's first year. And it was an okay year. We went to a bowl game, nothing to write home about. But I just remember being so proud. I was a cornerstone piece of that foundation that we were building. And then 5 years later, they're in the Big Ten championship. And so sometimes it's not always about what you do that year, but the legacy you leave. Yeah. And for you being such a foundational guy, veteran guy, for you, what is it you want, to be remembered about this team and your role?
Yeah. What did it always say on the door when you left, Hoy?
There's a lot of things it said.
What was one of them?
Don't believe the hype.
No.
Which one?
Manage expectations.
Manage expectations, I know. Well, I figured Bill's not here anymore, so we're kind of navigating around this area. So
yeah, look,
I'm not asking for predictions.
No,
record.
I know. But when you said expectations, that was the first thing I thought of.
Reading this paper.
Look, I think one, you talk about the culture, right? And it's building that culture.
Yeah.
And look, winning's important. That's the most important thing. And winning covers up any other thing that's going on. When you win, things are okay. Mm-hmm. So that's the most important thing, is winning, no matter what. That's the North Star. That's what you're striving for. But we have a lot of young players, like I said, like a guy like City, his development. He's a guy I could see playing here a long time and having success here. And so guys up front like that, like I said, Layden. We have a new tackle, Caden. All these guys, getting them to understand what it takes to be a professional and what it takes to be successful. And it's not a 1 week thing. It's not a 1 day thing. It's 365. Mm-hmm. You always got to be thinking about it. Yeah. So I think that's up there for me. And like I said, we got a young quarterback. Whatever's going to happen there, and whatever I can do to help him and help develop him and help him be a better player. Because when you draft a guy like that, you're hoping he's going to be here another 15 years, whatever it is, and he's going to be your cornerstone. So I think those two, winning, obviously that's number one. And you gotta, if you're not playing to win the game, what's the point of even going out there?
100%.
And then two, like I said, just building that culture, whatever it is, and winning the right way and doing the right things. And, I think throughout the NFL season, it's such a short year in reality, but a long year. Mm-hmm. And it's okay, when you win a game on Sunday, everybody's the best. Then you go out and lose Sunday, everybody stinks. They need to fire everybody. Then you win Sunday, everybody's great again.
It fixes a lot of things, like you said.
So, but I think as a young player, it's kind of like riding that, you will ride that wave sometimes, and that's not good. Yep. You have to be focused on the little things each day, Don't ride those waves, good, bad, and you can't do it in the game. There's so many days, like you go out there, first drive of the game, 7-play drive, touchdown, you're like, oh, we're kicking their ass today. Next thing you know, you look up and you're like, oh, man, what happened?
Haven't had a third down conversion in 4 drives. Yep.
You know, I think about Kansas City in 2017. We were up big at half. I don't think we scored again,
right.
You know, season opener. And so it's like things like that. Like you can't ride those waves week to week, day to day, play to play. So helping guys with that, you know, and like I said, just establishing the culture that we want as the New England Patriots and as Jerod wants for our football team.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Well, can't wait to do this again next week.
Yeah, look forward to it.
All right, bud. A Shadow Line production and a part of B-Side Sports.